Hey everybody and welcome to Chairman of the Board. Today I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on the Castles of Burgundy, which is a 2 to 4 player kind of territory building game by very prolific designer Stefan Felds. So in this game you're going to be rolling dice and using those dice to draft tiles, which you'll then place on your individual player boards, trying to score as many points as you can in the process. Mechanically, Stefan Felds is really known for making kind of very mechanically sound games, ones that aren't really so interested in the theme, or not really concerned about that side of gaming. And the Castles of Burgundy is no real exception there. This is a very kind of mechanical game. So maybe one that's not so much for the kind of Amerithrash Thrash kind of gamers, and more of a Euro game. But that being said, the Castles of Burgundy is actually his most kind of accessible game, one that is more, it can be played by more families and kind of more casual gamers. So a little bit on the lighter scale compared to some of his other titles. As I said, this game is mechanically absolutely amazing, to be honest. The whole game does just work like clockwork. A very comprehensive amount of depth, which is compacted into a very tight set of mechanisms. And I really like that about the game, because all you're going to do in your turn is take one of 4 actions, and or using those dice. And yeah, within those actions, you've got a lot of depth there, because you're going to be choosing the tiles you want, you're going to be trying to place them, and obviously those tiles are all very individual, and loads of variability there, and loads of different strategies you can follow, and stuff like that. For a game that does use dice as its main kind of driving force, it's really not so much of a luck fest as you'd expect with most dice games, because there is so much mitigation here. You can kind of skip your turn and take workers, which let you manipulate your dice further by either such as like changing a 3 to a 4 or a 3 to a 2. So you've got that ability to either move a pip up or a pip down. And it's a really nice way of having more kind of autonomy on your turns, and you're not so much at the mercy of the dice. So I really like that about the game. I love the different routes you can take, because you've got those yellow knowledge tiles, which kind of are all linked to an individual strategy or several strategies you can follow throughout the game in order to achieve more end game scoring. I really like that about the Castles of Burgundy. You can go for loads of different kind of techniques of getting points. That being said, this is a real kind of a point salad kind of game. No matter what you do, you're going to get a boatload of points, and so is your opponent. So it's all about trying to get as many points as possible, and just trying to be as efficient as you can. So you've got like the building tiles, which let you kind of really pull off some very cool combinations, such as if you place one building on the board, then it will let you pull another one off straight away and put it on your own board. You can, maybe placing some boards let you place another one straight away and get more and more bonuses. You've got those ship tokens, which let you move along the player order track, which is really awesome. I like that kind of mechanism in all games, where you kind of have to jostle for the first player position, because those tiles on the shared board are in hot demand, so you've got to be in there early to make sure that you can get what you want. I love the kind of set collection aspect there with the farming, because you're going to collect all these different animals, and the more are the same animals you're going to score, you're going to get multipliers and bonuses. It's just a very nice game, a deep game that is, as I said, condensed into a very simple set of mechanisms. Decisions here are very compelling. Again, you're trying to be as efficient as you can. When something does go your way, it's really rewarding and satisfying. Basically, the game is very satisfying when you've pulled off this amazing turn and got loads and loads of points, trying to fill up your regions on the board in order to get points in return. Balance-wise, the game is really good. I mean, as I said, it is a dice game, so you are kind of slightly at the mercy of your dice, but not to a point where you feel like you're being screwed over ever. I've never felt a game of Castles of Burgundy where the dice has completely gone against me, because it's always been my choice not to stop and take some workers to allow me to manipulate my dice further, if that makes sense. So I've always felt like the best player has always won the game, although sometimes if you keep getting bad rolls, or not suitable rolls, because there's not really a bad roll in this game, because a 1 is just as effective as a 6 in the right circumstances. But yeah, I've never really felt like the dice have completely screwed me over, because as again, the mitigation is there. There are loads of different ways you can mitigate the luck of the dice. I think optimal player count is probably going to be at 2 or 3 players for me personally. Don't get me wrong, there's not a lot of kind of downtime here, but the game just does seem to kind of tick along at a nicer pace with that 2 or 3 player count. I think I actually prefer this more than anything at 2 player, which is kind of rare for me to kind of say I like a Euro game most at 2 players. But the Castles of Burgundy does work particularly well at 2 players. Because it's so back and forth, there's like no downtime here at all. And if there is a bit of downtime, it's not much, because those dice, although they do kind of, restrict you in ways, you can work around them. And so they kind of more act as kind of a guide that you can kind of divert from, rather than you're restricted and strictly going to just do what the dice say. It just acts as a kind of a light path you can follow. And I really like that about the game, because it doesn't overwhelm you with the decisions. You're always kind of restricted within certain boundaries, the boundaries of that mitigation. And I really, really like that about the game. It stops it from being overwhelming, and it keeps it being accessible to players who aren't so into the brain burnery decisions that a lot of these Euro games tend to have. So I really, really like that about the game. Loads and loads of different variety of tiles that are in there, and every time you're going to get different tiles that come out, because there is loads more than you'll actually play with each game. So each game is going to be slightly different, and you're not always going to get the same tiles popping up each game, especially in regards to the buildings and the yellow tiles. As I said, the strategy tiles, I think they're like knowledge tiles, I believe they're called, or university tiles. They really do kind of make each game feel unique, because there's so much you can do in terms of like long-term decision making and short-term decision making. The long-term decision making being in relation to those yellow tiles, trying to get end game points, and the short-term being trying to fill up as much board as quickly as you can, because if you fill up certain sections in the earlier rounds, you're going to get a big chunk of points in return. So it's a real kind of push-pull decision whether you're going to be a bit more meticulous and get what you want where you want it, or just absolutely overload a certain area of the board and get a big chunk of points in return that way. I really like that about the game. Interaction, this kind of is mainly, I guess essentially you are restricted to your own board, but that communal board where you're actually going to be pulling your tiles from is a really good use of interaction there, because there will be times where you really want a specific tile, and your opponent will come and take it just before you're going to get it. And obviously that frustration is, it's a tried and tested implementation of adding player interaction. Adds a good level of suspense and just that tension of whether other players are going to go for the same tiles that you are going to go for is really, really interesting. Without being, particularly nasty or aggressive. And I like that level of interaction. Some of the tiles, such as the mines, are in really hot demand there. So it really does link well to that competition of being further along on the player track, because there's always that jostle for position on being in the lead, so that you do get first dibs on tiles on your turn. Really, really cool mechanism there. Despite the actual mechanical elegance and depth and the funness of the game is slightly let down by its components and graphic design. I mean, the artwork here is well, there's not much artwork to be honest, but it's very drab looking. It feels cheap. It looks a bit cheap. So it's a shame that such a great, fun, dynamic game is hindered by its visual appeal. It really does look like a drab game, probably one of the most boring looking games I own, which is a shame because it's no relation to the gameplay at all. It's such a fun game, and if there was ever a game that needed a like a deluxe version, then it's the Castles of Burgundy. Don't get me wrong, it's really great that they've kind of gone in for a price point that's so accessible. I believe the game only cost about £20 to buy in the UK, so that's really, really cheap, and I think I've paid more than that for simple filler games. So the level of game that you're going to get in return for your money is amazing, but it's just a shame that I think the visual appeal is going to deter certain players because it just doesn't look fun to play, even though it really, really is. Talking about theme with this game is a bit kind of, it's a bit void really, because theme is not what this game is about. It's a Euro game, it's a Stefan Felds game. Judging the Castles of Burgundy on its thematic ties is like, teaching a fish to climb a tree, or, comparing a fish on its ability to climb a tree. It's just not what the game's about at all. So I kind of give it a pass in that regard because, I mean, don't get me wrong, it does feel kind of good, like you are kind of filling up your own region or your own territory of France here. But again, it's not a thematic game at all. It's just simply about the points, and it does feel that way. Setup time is, it's okay, not too bad. A little bit, there's quite a few components here. You're going to be stacking a few things, getting a few things in the right position, but nothing too overwhelming. The upkeep is, maybe a little bit more than average, a bit more than your average game, but again, nothing too problematic if everybody chips in and keeps the game ticking along. And the same goes for tear down time as well. As long as you've got like, I would recommend you kind of get like a little, little hobby box or something to separate all the different tiles in, just so you can set up a bit quicker. It does really go a long way, and it does work well for the Castles of Burgundy because there are a lot of separate little niggly components. So, but nothing too much to worry about there. So overall, I think the Castles of Burgundy is a really good game, an excellent game in fact. It's really good fun and is just a really good kind of introductory kind of game to those Euro, that Euro kind of style of game. So if you have a player who's kind of a bit temperamental, a bit standoffish with games that look like this, because it looks boring as hell, this is a good one to try because they're going to play it and they think this is actually fun. It's not as dry as it looks. It's just a dynamic, fun game, and if it looked differently and had a different kind of theme and it could really, don't get me wrong, it is very, very, widely received and been very, very a massive successful game. But it does feel like the visual appeal does hold it back somewhat. But I think as soon as someone plays it, they're going to be absolutely intrigued and interested and really enjoy themselves because it is a very fun game. Loads and loads of decisions to make. You've got the great use of the dice, but with the good mitigation. Really cool dynamic combos you can pull off. And it's just really, really good fun. Plays in a good amount of time. And yeah, mechanically, what you'd expect from a Stefan Felds game. Absolutely brilliant. So, if you can't tell, I'm a big fan and a big advocate of the Castles of Burgundy. I think it's deserved every bit of success it's had. It's it's been like a top 10 or 15 game on the Board Game Geek rankings for a long, long time now, and so rightly so because it is so accessible for a game of such depth, and it's just a really, really, really fun game. So I hope you've enjoyed this quick review where I've shared my thoughts on the Castles of Burgundy. I do recommend it. If you have enjoyed the video, please hit like and subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos too. For everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.